Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this October 21st meeting of the Somerville School Committee. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2024, this meeting of the school committee will be conducted via hybrid participation. We will post an audio recording, audio-video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of these proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting on the City of Somerville website and local cable access government channels. We will start with a moment of silence and a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Superintendent, will you please call the roll?
Yes, through the chair, Ms. Barish.
Here.
Mayor Ballantyne, President Owen Campen, Mr. Green. Mr. Green is attending virtually, so we're waiting for him to respond.
Here, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Ms. Piton. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Piton.
Here.
Ms. Piton.
Yes, here.
Dr. Ackman.
Here.
Dr. Phillips.
Here.
Chair Crepton.
Here.
We have quorum.
Okay, that brings us to our first item, which is the report of our student representatives. And we have two new representatives here this evening, so welcome.
Hello everyone, my name is Jampa Lanyitong. I'm a senior and student school committee representative from the high school. Last Wednesday, the student committee representatives hosted a focus group discussion about school policy and school improvements during our X-Block period. We heard from about 15 students, took notes, and are now implementing ideas with student groups and teachers from the community. Ideas included ways to boost student morale, attendance policies, and ways to change our class cup competition. Overall, the purpose of our focus group was to hear from our student body and amplify the voices of all students, including ESL students who were supported by our multilingual committee representatives. On a different note, last Friday was our annual homecoming dance. Around 500 students attended the historic dance at Summer Nova, with our theme being the New York Fashion Formal. Students were pleasantly surprised by a change of scenery and enjoyed a long night with catered food, an excellent DJ, and an amazing student performer. All proceeds from the homecoming dance will be going to the senior prom, which will be the first Somerville prom on a yacht. Now I will hand it over to Tiago, who has the rest of the announcements.
Good evening, my name is Tiago Coelho Betty, and I'm also a student committee rep, a senior this year. Along with the successful homecoming, the days leading up to Friday the 18th, homecoming day, was a spirit week that brought student officers planned, which really brought students together with a different theme every day. Also next week, students during X-Block will be able to voice their opinions on the program of studies next week for the next school year. And lastly, the quarter closes on November 1st, which is the same day Common App closes, which has been really impactful for a lot of students. So, thank you.
Great, thank you both for that, and thank you for being here. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? I just have a quick question. Everyone's probably aware that we had to implement a secure and hold at the high school on Friday, and I'm just curious what you guys have heard from your peers about how everyone felt about how that went, or any feedback for if something has to happen again in the future like that.
I think that a lot of students were a little bit confused rather than, I think, primarily scared because it was like a secure and not like an actual lockdown. I think that also like the quickness of the response from the city was also very helpful in students getting that clarity. One thing that I think was a little bit strange for us was because of the new phone policy, many students were still unaware to talk to their parents, which was a bit scary. but we were able to get our phones after the class ended, which was good.
Great. Thank you for that. All right, if there are no further questions, thank you for the report. That brings us to public comment. Do we have any public comment, Ms. Garcia? Okay, there is no public comment. So that brings us, oh, yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot to introduce our interpreters. Thank you for that reminder. So I'm going to introduce our interpreters who are on Zoom. Spanish, if you want to introduce yourself.
So hi everyone, I'm going to be the interpreter. Hola a todos.
We'll come back. Portuguese, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, good evening. My name is Thelma Leitão. I will be your Portuguese interpreter for tonight. To listen to this meeting, click the globe on the bottom of your screen and select Portuguese. Boa noite, meu nome é Thelma Leitão. Serei sua intérprete de português essa noite. Para ouvir essa reunião, clique no globo na parte inferior da sua tela e selecione Português.
Great, thank you. And Spanish, if you want to unmute yourself and try again. We had trouble hearing you.
Oh, hi, can you hear me? Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so my name is Adi. I'm going to be the interpreter for you. And if you want to hear the translation in Spanish, down below on the right. Hola, mi nombre es Adi. Estaré haciendo de intérprete para ustedes esta noche. Si quieren escuchar la interpretación en español, por favor, cliquen en el botón derecho a la derecha.
Great, thank you. That brings us to the report of the superintendent. Dr. Carmona.
Good evening, everyone, and really excited to see Tiago and Jampa today. Thank you for your feedback and your input, and also really thrilled to see the wonderful faces of our community here, especially our staff. So in this week's district report, we have a few different topics we plan to cover, ranging from staff development to facilities updates. Before we welcome some district leaders to share updates and presentations, I want to set the tone for why each of these critical initiatives are important to the core mission and commitment to our students. On the face of it, each of today's individual updates share important pieces of information. As a collective, however, they demonstrate our community and vision of our strategic plan. We envision a student-centered learning community where every student, honoring their unique strengths and backgrounds, is empowered to thrive academically, socially, and emotionally through tailored supports and equitable access to opportunity. Of course, academic rigor is at the center of our district's mission. So beyond academics, there are many systems and work streams that contribute to student success. Our commitment to staff development, for example, supporting and developing excellent educator and staff teams with high-quality training opportunities and pathways for growth, continuing to diversify our workforce, celebrating our students and staff, honoring their unique and diverse backgrounds, implementing culturally responsive teaching, equity,
Implementar responsibility.
maintaining safe, accessible, modern facilities, strengthening partnerships with the DPW and with the City of Somerville, strengthening work and order tracking and the tracking system that we're trying to streamline, as well as the MSBA school building process. Our forthcoming strategic plan not only builds on the work that we have already done as a district, but lays additional groundwork and plans for specific ways in which we plan to develop new systems and strategies to support our students and staff. Each of our district reports will, I hope, demonstrate our long-standing commitment in these areas and shed some light on how our daily operations support these goals. And so, as you hear from different staff this evening, I hope you keep each of these ideals in mind as to how they work as part of our overall systems while honoring and celebrating the work of our staff and students. With that, I would like to pass it over to Dr. Boston Davis for a wonderful staff update.
Thank you, and through the chair, we're really thrilled to welcome so many in today, and it's one of our most exciting times of the year as we get to recognize educators who have earned professional teacher status. And for those of you who may not know what professional teacher status is, it's earned for an educator who has served in the district for 3 consecutive years under the appropriate DESE licensure for their role, and with the recommendation of the principal and the superintendent. So this professional teacher status entitles them to certain measures of job security within the union, the educator's union contract, and we are so thrilled to have all of them here, and those who couldn't make it tonight. So today, I'm incredibly proud to announce that we have 34 educators who have reached professional teacher status. As I mentioned, not everyone is able to join us this evening, but this is a big milestone for all of our educators, and I hope you will join me in thanking each of them to their dedication to the Somerville Public Schools. So at this time, I'd like to invite up Chief Personnel Officer Karen Woods, Director of Human Resources Mariana McDonald, and Director of Educator Development Christopher Glenn to the podium to announce our honorees for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Boston Davis, and through you, Chair. I am Karen Woods, the Chief Personnel Officer for the district.
Mariana McDonald, HR Director for the district.
Chris Glenn, Director of Educator Development.
And as a team and in collaboration with many of our colleagues, we have the pleasure of being responsible for the recruitment, hiring, retention, development, and advancement of our educators in the Somerville Public Schools. So I just want to take one moment to personally express my gratitude and congratulations for all of the educators who have earned professional status that we're recognizing this evening. Yay. Earning professional teacher status is not an easy feat. It's not something that just comes along after 3 years. It takes a lot of dedication and hard work. We hold very high expectations for our educators in Somerville, and the educators here have met and demonstrated those. I'm trying to talk to behind me as well. Have met and demonstrated those expectations in the relationships that they build with students and the experiences that they provide for students. And so, teaching is hard work. Anyone who's been in the classroom knows teaching is really hard work. And so we're celebrating this really important milestone, but I think teaching is also a calling, right? Education is a calling, and we're also celebrating that commitment to that calling and the profession. So thank you for all that you do, and I'm gonna pass it over to Mariana to get us started.
Okay. So without further ado, I will call the school first with their supervisor. The supervisor will call the educator up, and they will read a nice statement about him. So if Amy can come up.
Hey, Amy.
Hello, my name is Amy Candelora, and I am the proud assistant principal at the Argenziano School. The first person that I'm excited to celebrate is Shannon Kelly. Miss Kelly joined Somerville Public Schools after COVID, first as a district-wide resource room teacher, and then became full-time at the Argenziano School. She seamlessly integrated herself into many school communities, jumping in to help students succeed from the very beginning. Miss Kelly brings joy and compassion and has helped many students improve in their reading, writing, math, and executive functioning skills. Her warm demeanor and bright outlook are appreciated by both students and staff and truly make a difference in our school. She collaborates with colleagues to ensure that students' needs are met. Ms. Kelly is a caring and kind professional who brings many previous special education experiences to her work here in Somerville. She advocates for her students and is always willing to lend a helping hand to her colleagues. We are lucky to have Miss Kelly as part of our team. Congratulations. Oh, we have to take a picture. Oh. Thank you. Can I please invite Stanley Duperval up? Stanley is our Dean of Students for grades 5 through 8. He joined the Argenziano School support team after his tenure in Boston Public Schools. With the team, he developed a strong vision, mission, and goal to move forward with the equity work for the Argenziano School. His contributions to our school-wide efforts to address students' social and emotional needs has been reflected in a reduction of conduct referrals and an improvement in students' overall social and emotional well-being. He's become an essential member of our team who we value greatly, and thank you for choosing the Argenziano School. Congratulations. Thank you. I think we need a photo.
And this is,
Thank you, everyone.
this is Amy Candelora, the assistant principal of the Argenziano School. Next up is May Chow, who is the K-12 art supervisor.
I'd like to call up Julia Alstein. I'd like to just echo what Karen had said about a calling. Julia is the epitome of someone who is in the right profession, and I'm so thrilled to have you on my team. Okay, here's a little speech. I'm delighted to celebrate Julia Alstein as she has earned her professional teacher status through her many, many accomplishments. Julia's dedication to her students and the field of art education is evident in her commitment of going above and beyond both inside and outside the classroom. As a traveling art educator working across 2 locations, she consistently demonstrates exceptional care, enthusiasm, and deep understanding of what it takes to succeed. Julia's growth over the years as both an educator and artist has been remarkable, and she continually seeks new ways to enhance her skills to benefit her students. Just to call out a few things that she's done, she has continuously got involved in STEAM-related projects. She's always involved in science and chibitronics. She's taught kids to really think about computer science in the visual arts way. She has also stepped outside of teaching and to join a connected arts network to really push the art education, strengthening pedagogy and instructional strategies, and leadership to better serve students. She regularly participates in all of our department meetings, and she really does share her love of teaching and teaching art across her peers. And she always gets kids to shine, and she has so many ways of getting kids involved. The annual contests, to getting kids to work in their design notebook. There's the annual duck stamp and Arbor Day. I always look forward to that new calendar because I know that Julia has always got a couple of students really featured in those calendars. It's amazing. She continually collaborates in the Common Planning Time, and the list keeps going and going. But all this to say that she's an absolute asset, and we are so lucky and thrilled to have you. Congratulations. Oh, wait.
Thank you. Okay. Next up is Felix Caraballo. He is the principal of the Capuano School.
Good evening, everyone. I'm very proud and honored to introduce Shayna Goggin. The word that first comes to mind when we think about Shayna is compassionate. She lives by this word every single day. She treats all her students and co-workers with the utmost respect. She's an asset for our school and has been an essential part of our community ever since she started working with us. Ms. Goggin is one example of an educator who started as a paraprofessional and evolved into a fine educator. And she's a product of Somerville Public Schools.
So I'm going to call up Chris Glenn right now. Jessica Anaya is another teacher who gained professional teacher status who couldn't make it today, but she said she's going to be virtual. She's not on. Do you want to read it anyways?
We'll read it anyways. She's earned it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Again, I'm Chris Glynn, Director of Educator Development, and I'm here to honor Jessica Anaya of the East Somerville Community School. Jessica is an exemplary educator. Teaching a room of 23 kindergartners is never easy. I have one, and I struggle with them at home. But Ms. Anaya manages to do it in both English and Spanish. She does a wonderful job making learning fun and engaging for her students. Ms. Anaya is beloved by her students and the families she serves, and is also a wonderful colleague who supports her peers. She works especially well with her grade-level partner, Ms. Quintanilla, and they organize activities like a wedding between the letters Q and U, which I was lucky enough to attend last year, and it was a beautiful ceremony, which makes the kids really excited to learn every day. So thank you and congratulations to Ms. Anaya.
Next, I'd like to call Sarah Wall, the principal of the Healy School, and Nadia Kari, who is the manager of our social workers.
There's only one.
There's only one?
Yeah, this one's for somebody. I'll go first.
Hi, I'm Nadia. I manage the school social workers, and one of our amazing social workers, Egla, is at the Healy School. Egla is extremely passionate in her role as a social worker at the Healy. She develops social emotional groups as well as meeting with students individually and provides wraparound services to the families there. Egla has become a real leader at the Healy and is a vital member of both the SST and MTSS teams. She provides critical insight to her colleagues and social emotional support to students at all the grade levels. She's extraordinary, dependable, responsive, and keeps students at the center of absolutely every decision she makes. She's expressed interest in learning and growing professionally within the education system, and her principal, Sarah, reports that the Healy School is so lucky to have her in their community. Congratulations, Egla. Thank you. Okay. Oh, it's okay.
Just trying to keep things interesting. Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Wall. I'm honored to be here to get to recognize two incredible members of our community. So Egla was one. I'm the principal at the Healy School, so I'm going to call up Rachel Russ. So Rachel Russ is a brilliant and thoughtful, not only what it says here, which is science teacher for 5th and 6th grade, but now also social studies teacher for our 5th graders. She's so flexible and so willing to do what's right for the students that she works with. Lessons in Ms. Russ's class are full of opportunities for students to engage in hands-on exploration and generate their own questions about concepts and phenomena, which she treats with absolute reverence and care. She has deep respect for the intellectual capacity of her students and their work, and her classroom is a space that truly nurtures young learners. In addition to her work in the classroom, she co-facilitates the Healy Robotics Club, providing an opportunity for students to stretch their science skills in new and creative ways. Ms. Russ is a unique and powerful member of our faculty, and we are so lucky to have her on our team at the Healy.
If Steve Marshall could come up, he's the principal of the John F. Kennedy School. And I'd like to call Will Verbis up just to accompany Steve.
All right, this is for Katie Dixon. Come on up, Katie. I am in awe of Katie's commitment to her students. She has worked diligently to promote and support the students she works with. Her consistent view of equity and what is needed is so obvious in the work she does every day. I am very proud to work alongside someone who cares for students in the way that she does. Congratulations on earning a well-deserved professional teacher status, but she is amazing, and she's actually kind of funny too, so. And then we have Laura Valenstein. Come on up. I am so grateful that Laura agreed to come and be a Kennedy Tiger. She is so caring and student-centered. She has brought so many amazing practices to the Kennedy and continues to do so. Her ability to work through student challenges and support all students is a sign of strong character. Commitment to students feeling loved, valued, and held to high expectations is truly who Laura represents. There is no truer words. She is the kindest, just most gracious, student-centered person that I have met in a long time. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Laura. And hi, Crystal. You work at my school.
And that was Will. He is the special ed coordinator for the Kennedy School. So I keep messing up. I'd like to call Lindsay, the counselor director for the high school, next.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Dobbins. I'm the school counseling department chair at the high school. And first, I'd like to welcome Kelly Albrecht. Kelly is a very thoughtful, professional, and skilled school counselor who works very hard to support every student on her caseload. She places a high priority on her individualized one-to-one student counselor meetings, recognizing their important role in our student support delivery model. With compassion and wisdom, Kelly demonstrates outstanding clinical insight and decision-making abilities, always advocating for equity and the well-being of our students. Overall, SHS was incredibly fortunate to have Kelly as an intern and now as an invaluable member of the school counseling team. She will continue to contribute significantly to this important profession, and we're so excited to offer her PTS status at SHS. Congratulations, Kelly. And next, I'd like to welcome Natalia Ruiz-Toro. In her role as a school counselor, Natalia exemplifies exceptional kindness, compassion, and insightfulness. Through meticulous attention to detail and adherence to deadlines, Natalia manages the academic, personal, social, mental health, and post-secondary planning needs of her complex student caseload. True. Yes. Overall, SHS is truly fortunate to have her as a member of the school counseling team. She will continue to contribute significantly to this important profession. We're so excited to offer her PTS status at SHS. Thanks, Natalia. Congratulations.
Andre Pelletier could come up. He's the principal of the West Somerville Neighborhood School.
Thank you, Mariana. I just stepped on half of Liz's family's feet. Sorry about that. I'm going to call Liz up first. How about that? Come on up. So Liz Nash, I met her last year. like I met a lot of people last year. But one of my goals as a new fixture there at West last year was to get in and out of classrooms a lot. And in doing so, I would have never guessed that Liz was only now reaching the point in her Somerville career where she's up for professional status. Her classroom is so full of joy and confidence. One of Liz's clear priorities is for each and every student in her care to feel happy, heard, and confident as a learner. To that end, one of my favorite times to visit room 307 is when the room has gathered as a community on the rug and is intently listening to each other. There is such a feeling of understanding and empathy, and that is a direct result of the kid-centered approach that frames everything Liz does with them. That reflective priority is also evident in the ways Liz interacts and collaborates with colleagues. And I am very much looking forward to seeing and learning from the work that Liz pushes us as a school to do moving forward. Congratulations. Thank you. All right. And next, Brenda Williams. Hi. This is Brenda's first time in Somerville. Nope, it's not. So Brenda's classroom is such a powerful place to visit. While it's filled with some of our youngest students, it's consistently a space where some of the most independent learning in our building is happening. Brenda's ability to design tasks and support learners to independently access ideas is well beyond her years as a teacher. One of my favorite things to see is her kiddos working together to read the room, or the hallway technically, but it's so powerful to see students, clipboards in hand, 5-year-olds, collaborating to look for words that match pictures, record syllables in words they're finding, match numbers to equations on the walls, or find words that rhyme. Brenda brings so much to our building, and I feel so lucky to have the opportunity to learn with and from her moving forward. Thank you. Congratulations. That is for you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Last but not least, Ildefonso Adriano, Director of Special Education.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. I would like to call Megan Brown up to the podium, please. I'm here substituting for Courtney Goslin, the principal over at Winter Hill. She wasn't able to come here tonight, so I have the honor of talking a little bit about Megan. So Megan Brown is a dedicated educator at the Winter Hill Community Innovation School. She is a special education teacher in the AIM, Adapt, Include, Motivate program, who works primarily with students in the middle school grades. During her time at Winter Hill, she has served students well by building positive relationships with them and their families, strengthening their academic, social, and behavioral skills, as well as promoting independence. She has collaborated with the Tufts Center for Engineering Education and Outreach to bring engineering experiences to her students. Through this project, students work on various creations that allow them to be involved in what they are interested in. She also works hard to find opportunities for her class to be involved in the school activities and the community. She is a strong advocate for her students and is invested in their success. We appreciate all that Ms. Brown brings to our Winter Hill community. Thanks. So I have two other people that I'm going to call, and when I was writing something about them, I had written pages and pages and pages, but they were very quick to say, Ildefonso, just keep it brief, please. And it speaks to their ability or their way of putting students first and not making them about them. So I am going to be asking for Marissa McDonald to come up first. Marissa is our assistant director in the special education department. So I am going to be brief. So Marissa demonstrates excellent leadership, dedication, and a strong commitment to the mission and vision of the Special Education Department. Her continued contributions will lead to even greater success for the department. I am very happy to be working with Marissa. She has been instrumental in making my transition into this position seamless. So thank you, Marissa. And last but not least, Mr. Verbitz. So Will has been instrumental in overseeing, well, before I get there, Will is our Special Education Department coordinator over at the Kennedy. I think everybody knows, yes, yay. Will has been instrumental in overseeing numerous projects, ensuring that operations run smoothly and efficiently in the Special Education Department. Will brings a positive attitude and a collaborative spirit to the department. His hard work and professionalism are greatly appreciated. And again, another instrumental person in making my job and my transition into this position seamless. So thank you, Will.
Okay, I think we're closing this out now. Just looking around the room and just seeing everyone grinning ear to ear, it reminds me how joyful this is. And we're just blessed that we have this next new class of educators who have already changed kids' lives and are going to continue to do that with us here in Somerville. So I say to all of you, welcome to the family. We're lucky to have you. We hope you stay with us for your entire careers. You're going to keep on changing kids' lives, and they're going to change yours. Believe me, it's happened to me. So congratulations to you all. And I don't have the authority to make a motion, but I do see cake. I do see cake here, so I will yield the floor to school. So
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I will just quickly say thank you all for being here. I know I speak for the school committee when I say we wouldn't be a school committee without all of you. And with that, we will take a brief recess for cake.
you really hold the space and the flavor and the tone of why this is important. I really, when I hear that most of the educators were working around a student-centered attitudes, I felt that that's the profile of the learner we're looking for, the profile of the educator we're looking for. So thank you. Thank you for helping us for that. Yeah. And thank you for the cake. Mm-hmm. All right, so we'll continue with the report. I am going to have Dr. Boston Davis continue with the next part of that.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm really thrilled to welcome up our Director for Equity, Kaylee Galatano, who's going to give a brief presentation around Hispanic Heritage Month. So as you likely know, last week closed National Hispanic Heritage Month, and we want to honor the ways in which we as a district celebrate our Hispanic heritage within our district this month. And also how we continue to lift and center the voices of Latino students. According to DESE, our school, this school year, 40.4% of our student body identify as Hispanic. So not only is it important for us to just recognize, uplift, and celebrate, but also recognize that a large part of our student makeup are students who identify as Hispanic, and so we are thrilled to hear the ways in which we've celebrated them over the past month. So with that, I'll pass it to Kaylee.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So as Dr. Boston Davis said, I'm going to do my presentation. I'm going to try to keep it brief. I have a lot of information to share, so I'll do my best to keep it within like 10 to 15 minutes. So I'm happy to share with you the work that is being done in our district to celebrate and highlight Hispanic Heritage Month. This work is being done to amplify the importance of cross-cultural collaboration and to eliminate the idea that being a person of color is a deficit, but rather recognize it as a strength and something to be celebrated. So this slide, sorry, you can go back to the triangle across the, yeah. So I'm going to share just a little bit of a brief history of National Hispanic Heritage Month. And why we celebrate it. So National Hispanic Heritage Month celebrates Hispanic culture, which includes people whose ancestry is from Spain, Mexico, the Caribbean, and Central and South America. America started to observe this holiday under the Lyndon Johnson administration, and it was brought to the administration by a Mexican-American representative from California, Edward Roybal. The observation was later expanded in the late 80s, 1988, by President Ronald Reagan to encompass the September 15th to the October 15th, as we recognize it now. The start date of September 15th is significant because it is when, in the year of 1821, the Latin American countries of Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua gained independence from Spain. Mexico declared its independence from Spain on September 16th in 1810, but it wasn't until 11 years later that it was recognized. And the September 16th date of 1810 is known as the Grito de Dolores, which is the cry of Dolores. Chile celebrates their Independence Day on September 18th. In addition, the holiday that is recognized as Indigenous Peoples Day, which is October 12th, is referred to in Mexico and many Latinx countries as Dia de la Raza, which is Day of Race. And that is in an effort to recognize the mix of African, European, and Indigenous heritage. The Caribbean is included in Hispanic Heritage Month because it is a region which American citizens of Hispanic heritage have ancestral ties. Next slide, please. As Dr. Davis mentioned, about 40% of SPS students identify as Latina or Hispanic, so it's important to understand the difference between what it is to be Latinx versus Hispanic. Sometimes the terms are used interchangeably. However, Hispanic refers to Spanish-speaking culture, so it includes Spain along with Spanish-speaking Latin American countries. Latinx, Latina, Latina, or Latino refers to Latin American countries, including both Spanish and non-Spanish speaking nations in the Caribbean, Central America, South America, and North America. So that means that our Haitian and Brazilian students are Latinx. It's important to distinguish between these two terms because their histories are very different. Sometimes I am asked too why folks say Latine or Latinx. So Latine is a gender-neutral form of the word, which was created by gender non-binary and feminist communities in Spanish-speaking countries. And the objective of the term is to take the gender away from the word and implement the word "y," which is used in other Spanish words such as estudiante. Latinx is based on an LGBTQ-inspired desire to go gender-neutral for a wide-ranging and growing group of Americans whose heritage lies in Spanish-speaking and/or Latin American countries. I personally use Latine, but sometimes I'll say Latinx. Next slide, please. The ways in which SPS highlights and celebrates Hispanic, Latine, and Caribbean Heritage Month is in keeping with the district belief that, quote, through embedding equity and access into every aspect of our school culture and community, by maintaining a multicultural, multilingual, and inclusive school community, and disrupting and eliminating roadblocks to quality outcomes through strategic systems and practice, end quote. Highlighting cross-cultural collaboration and multicultural strengths allows students to be seen, heard, and validated, and allows them to better engage in their learning. Next slide, please. The Early Childhood Development Department highlights the richness of Somerville's diversity throughout the Early Childhood C program, which is the Somerville Early Education, Big Ideas, and that connects families' lived experiences and builds on children's funds of knowledge. We have about 30% of our preschool population which identifies as Hispanic or Latine. ECC intentionally selects and develops instructional materials, read-aloud texts, vocabulary cards, visual supports, etc., that represent and affirm the cultural identities of our Hispanic, Latine, and Caribbean students. Next slide, please. So our K-8 programming is highlighting, celebrating, and recognizing the contribution of Latine, Hispanic, and Caribbean people, and they're doing that by weaving it through the curriculum of the 6 through 8 social studies and ELA departments. The K-8 ELA and social studies curriculum includes units and texts which prompt students to examine Hispanic, Latine, and Caribbean culture, and also examine what it means to belong to a culture or community and understand the aspects of assimilation and acculturation. This is helping the students to understand social justice and social injustice. It's also helping them to learn about the roles that race, gender, class, and culture play and how individuals experience the world and their proximity to power. They are learning about the dangers of stereotype, and they're gaining an understanding of how to reject stereotypes when learning and interacting with folks from different cultures. Next slide, please. And Unidos is providing a curated list of books featuring Latinx authors, illustrators, and protagonists to celebrate Latinx Heritage Month. They do this throughout the year, but they're putting a particular spotlight on it, or put a particular spotlight on it for Hispanic Heritage Month. Next slide, please. And these are just some of the schools' highlights. Every school, it's important to say, is making a very concerted and thoughtful effort on how to highlight this month. So a lot of the principals are sharing out with their school in morning announcements. Different change makers who are Latine, Hispanic, and Caribbean. They have equity book corners in different classrooms. They are having announcements that are being done by student government. Some of the announcements are being done in both Spanish and in English and in Portuguese. So those are some of the things that they're doing in the schools throughout the district. Those 4 are highlighted, but as I mentioned, they're doing wonderful work in all of the schools. Next slide, please. And that brings us to Somerville High School, who had some wonderful events that happened throughout Hispanic Heritage Month. The events were organized by the LSU, which is the Latinx Student Union, and that was under the guidance of Carlos Contreras, and he's done a wonderful job in giving the kids power and being able to have their voices heard and celebrate Hispanic, Latine, Caribbean Heritage Month in a way that is engaging, that is educational, and that is a lot of fun, and that's very important. Next slide, please. And one of the things we did this year, which was different, I believe, than anything that we've done in past years to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, is we partnered with Summer Viva. They had an event on, I think it was the 12th, and it was 2 to 5 in the afternoon at the East Somerville Community School. Ruth Santos from the SFLC and I went and met with the art department, with May and her wonderful art educators, and we asked them to please highlight this month, discuss with them how they were highlighting it, and ask them to have their student, would they be willing to donate some of their student work to the Summer Viva event that was happening at the East Somerville. They said yes, and this is some of the work that was donated. So when they had this wonderful event, people were able to come see their students' work. The students were able to be very proud of the work that they'd done and share it with their families and community. Next slide, please. And of course, we have our newsletters and resources. I send out a newsletter every month. I also send out emails to folks. We also have updates that are in the superintendent updates that go to the principals. And in some of those are different talking points or change makers or things that folks can use in their morning announcements and share with their educators. Next slide, please. And looking ahead, something that we would like to do next year is have the first ever annual Hispanic Heritage Month flag raising at City Hall. So that's something that we're working on. I don't have much more to say about it than that. And next slide, please. And that is the end of the presentation. I just do want to highlight that the educators in the district they're thoughtful, they're creative, they're invested, and they're invested in having this work be done, not just in the month of Hispanic, not just September 15th to October 15th. They are very invested into weaving this throughout their curriculum. We have wonderful help from our curriculum department that works with educators to help do that, provide them with supports and instructional tools, so that this is something that, yes, we celebrate one time a year, but it's something that we are really working hard to be integrated into the curriculum and instruction that we have going on every day. And that's it for me.
Thank you very much for that informative presentation. Are there comments or questions from my colleagues? Okay, I will take Andre from remote and then Dr. Ackman.
Thank you. So this is all fantastic, and I'm really glad to hear about the efforts to weave it deeper into our curriculum, because I admit that I always have mixed feelings about our ethnic minority months, because I don't want to just live in those months. Especially, as you pointed out, when you realize that 40% of our students are of Latino descent. And I think I want to focus on that because I also believe we all agree that there's students who are most suffering from educational equity right now. So I would love to hear more about what we're doing specifically aimed at those students to improve instruction year-round.
So I think that part of that question is for the curriculum department. I can tell you what we are doing to partner with the curriculum department, and that is to have equity specialists and other members of equity team be a part of the groups of folks who are examining the curriculum and the instruction that we use. We also have we're working closely with an educator at the high school, Brenda Jaster, who is working on through a grant that we received from BU on reflecting on literacy through a lens of equity. And she's not here, but she is better equipped to answer that. I know that it is examining not just the tropes that we are learning about and teaching about, but it's also using the science of reading to help to improve our instruction and our teaching and our learning, right? Because if people aren't learning, then we're not then like, are we teaching? So it's examining it through that lens. I hope that that answers your question.
Dr. Boston Davis also wants to respond.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you, Member Green. I think I really do appreciate the question, and I think there's always a fine line of how do we uphold and celebrate and recognize, regardless of what our population is, the wonderful contributions of Hispanic people within our and heritage within our community and society, but especially considering our population. How do we recognize those things without it feeling tokenizing? It's important that we're doing all of the things that Director Galatano is saying, and it's also important to recognize this tension that you named, so I really appreciate that. I want to just add to what Kaylee said, because I don't think she gives herself enough credit. You're doing a lot here as it relates to the very question that was posed around addressing the real instructional and persistent, predictable gaps that we're facing. So Kaylee, under her direction and with our team, is leading professional development for all second-year educators. Everyone is required to take that is in their second year within our district, on using the framework of culturally responsive teaching in the brain. I know you can speak more about it, but the pedagogical practices highlighted in that text, which are now in our strategic plan, do name exactly when we think about persistent and predictable gaps, especially as it relates to our students who are Hispanic, Latino. The moves and the pedagogical practices, the thoughtfulness, the way in which we look at data all come from that book. So that's one thing she's doing. She's also joins all of our principal meetings, so it's all of the principals getting together, and we do instructional rounds, as you know, in every single school. And Kaylee is at the table right alongside principals to thought partner, and that is really focused on the task, on what's happening in the classrooms. And one thing that I'm excited about is, some schools, in particular one that we're even going to go to this week, have identified as the focus area for the walk is really noticing in their data this predictable and persistent gaps that are rightly named around the performance of Hispanic Latino students and their peers. And we're going to be walking through classrooms together as a principal team, looking specifically at what is there, what are we noticing as it relates to what's happening in the instructional core. And Kaylee will be there at that table as a thought partner doing that. I also, so the culturally responsive teaching in the brain, the instructional rounds. Oh, and finally, I wrote down 3 things as you were talking, because I'm like, you do so many things. The other thing is that in our coaching meetings with Lynch Leadership Academy, we have a fantastic partner with LLA that facilitates those. Kaylee also joins every single one of those meetings as an active participant and is able to push on these very notions. So I think you continue to do a fantastic on the task of, as it relates to highlighting the things that we're doing to celebrate, which we should do, and doing a lot to name that tension, and how do we not make this tokenizing, but also recognizing there are deep, persistent, and predictable outcome disparities that we need to be looking closely at. So I just wanted to, thank Member Green for the question, and also add to Kaylee's response, because she does do a lot in regards there.
I had Dr. Ack, and then Mr. Bichon. Dr. Ack.
Thank you. Did you say there was someone out? Because I have a series of questions.
Start with one, and then I'll come back.
Great. So first off, thank you. Thank you for sort of distinguishing Latin and Hispanic. I think it's important. I think it's something that we need to be talking about, especially in a district. Thank you for sharing our Hispanic students. I would love, when we have that presentation, if we have that information, talking about our Latinx students as well, because we do have such a large Brazilian population. I think it would be interesting for us to see, what percent is each of them. And I went to the Latin Heritage celebration It was beautiful. It was lively. The art was gorgeous. I saw proud kids taking parents over. I believe my kid collected swag from every table that was there. And I will go back in line, but it was lovely.
So I think Mr. Green had a follow-up, and then I will go to Ms. Bertone. Mr. Green, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I just wanted to, first of all, thank both Dr. Ross-Davis and the team for their answers, but also just say I expected there'd be more than you could possibly answer. So I think what I'm actually asking for is a future presentation specifically around the ways in which we are trying to address the instruction gaps for that population.
I don't know if I heard the question, Jen.
I think the question, if I heard it correctly, was just to have a presentation at some point around the instructional pieces to what we're doing for this gap, correct?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm severely stuffed up this evening.
No worries. So yes, noted. Dr. Ross-Davis is nodding her head. So then I will go to Ms. Bertone and then back to Dr. Ackman.
Thank you, Chair, through you. And thank you also for the lovely presentation. It's so reinforcing to see this, the work that's happening across our district in partnership with different departments and all with a common purpose. What you were talking about in highlighting the importance of the cultural history and contributions from Hispanic Latine communities, and then what Dr. Davis was describing with respect to the outcomes and the differences in measured learning outcomes that we're seeing. Is there a way by which we use those data to measure the impact of our work here with an equity focus? And I know I'm just trying to understand, and I think these are great things that we're doing. How can we see the impact of the work sort of at the end, and when can we, it may not be in the data, the test data, it may be in a sort of qualitative, you may know it when you see it, right, when you're hitting the right stride, but I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that.
Sure, yeah, I'd love to. So one of the things that we're doing is, to that point, is looking at data like qualitative versus quantitative data, right? So qualitative data measures how people feel, and do they feel that they belong? Do they feel safe? So one of the things that we're doing this year in the Equity Specialist Department, and I think I do a presentation later in the year for you all of an overview of the department, but I can tell you briefly right now, that piece of it is we have 3 different working groups within the equity specialists. So there's 12 specialists, there's 3 working groups of 4 people. One of those groups is tasked with, they're partnering with our data department, so with Sam and Arundhati, and we're examining not just the data that we have, but the measures and the tools that we're using to collect that data. So like the conditions for learning survey, right? Can we do a different version of that? Are we capturing all of the people that we want to answer that? Should we keep that and add another measure? So that is one of the things that we are looking at, right? Because there's a difference between, hopefully, ideally, we would like to see both those, the gaps closing in both how people are reporting that they feel, and then also in the performance that we're seeing from the students on test or in schoolwork and standardized tests. But yes, that is something that we are working on, with a focus on understanding qualitative data, and also having a small workshop so that it's important that everybody understands qualitative versus quantitative data, how we're measuring both of those, how we can collect those. So as we're going out and doing that work, everybody has the same kind of foundational understanding on what it is we're looking at and why we're looking at it. I hope that answers your question. Mm-hmm.
Did you want to respond as well?
Absolutely. If it's okay, I'd love to add to that as well. And what I'm hearing, and what I'll add just from a couple of things that I saw in the past week of the observations, is what we know is that representation matters. We know that, many of us from our different layers of identity know that from our own experience, but there is, a number of data points that show that, be it, teachers of color, and then the representation in higher classes or college attainment and all that because of the teachers in front of students. I'm even thinking about the engagement level of students. Over the past week, I've been in both high school and in K-8s talking about the Constitution. They're talking about, specifically the Bill of Rights. They're talking about the Declaration of Independence today, and the engagement level with those documents, those primary sources, really varies depending on the way in which the case is made and the connection is made to kind of the kid sitting in front, regardless of the background. So when we have things like what Director Galatano is describing, really connected into the why of what we're learning, it helps with engagement as well. So that's not a very neat answer to the question or direct, but I would just complement that in saying that, we know that it is really important for engagement, and I hope we see that in the outcomes as well.
Thank you both.
I have Dr. Ackman and then Ms. Patone.
Thank you. Through the chair, to respond to Mr. Green's earlier comment, we do get presentations on this in ed programs on examples of this, and I would encourage him to look through minutes. I'm happy to share them, or presentations that have been shared, because while the whole body isn't hearing all of this, a subset of us are, and by approving minutes, you technically are hearing about it too, so it is being reported. So thank you. I'm sort of curious, and as Dr. Boston Davis mentioned, representation matters. I'm curious if there's any inclusion of Hispanic serving institutions, like if HSIs make it into the conversation, just as we're thinking about the populations we serve and sort of, I know we're preparing students for all trajectories after high school, but I'm wondering if that's sort of part of this work so far, and if not, if there's any anticipation of that.
I think that as of now, I don't know that those conversations are happening with the degree of frequency that they should, and that is certainly something that I appreciate you pointing out and sharing. And as we move forward in this work, being thoughtful about including that in the conversation, right? And when we're talking to kids about their future and what it looks like, including that in the conversation. And I'd like to see that for HBCUs as well. And but yes, thank you. That's a wonderful point.
Thank you.
Ms. Patone?
Thank you, through you, Chair. I just wanted to do a quick compliment to the team. I really appreciate how these systemic ways that you're integrating this work through the culturally responsive and the brain training for every teacher in the second year. I mean, that is huge. That is such a leap from where we were 10 years ago. I'm just listing your list to Dr. Boston Davis, but including this role, the Director of Equity and Excellence in the principal rounds, including them in the coaching, the Lynch leadership, as well as, I think there was something else and I can't remember. Oh, the equity specialists and their working groups. I mean, these are systematized ways that we're trying to address, which again, married with the outcomes that Mr. Bitton brought up, to seeing how we're impacting and affecting, but it's a real sea change, and I'm really excited about it, and I just wanted to compliment the team on that because you really hit me in a positive way, so thank you.
Air 5.
Mr. Green?
Thank you. Actually, building off of Dr. Ackman's excellent question about HSIs, I'm actually a bit surprised by your answer, since my understanding is that all the colleges, especially the colleges we partner with, Cambridge College, Booker Hill, UMass Boston, are HSIs. So I guess my question is, I also know when I work with Franklin Tech now, I guess my question is, when you say these conversations aren't happening, is it that we're just not specifically talking about Latina A students with these colleges, or is there something I'm missing?
So I don't think I said that.
Before you answer, can you just quickly clarify what an HSI is?
Historically Spanish institution, yes?
Yeah, it's I mean, Hispanic serving is, so like HBCU is historically black colleges and universities, and not as historic, but traditionally the ones that are more likely to serve Hispanic students is HSI, Hispanic Serving Institutions.
Thank you.
So technically speaking, just to be clear, because it's not quite comparable to HBCU, and HSI is any school with at least 25% of its students being identifying as Hispanic. And that's a government thing that gets some special grants, special options, etc.
So
Thank you.
Can I answer? Okay. So I didn't say that I can't remember how you phrased it, but it was that we don't have these connections. What I said was that I don't think that the connections are highlighted enough, and I don't think that that's I think that it's a good thing to recognize that in this moment. In other words, Dr. Ackman bringing that up, and my response of I don't think that we highlight it enough, I don't think that we highlight it enough. And the fact that we're kind of having this conversation right now, literally in this moment, reinforces that. And I think that that's something that we do need to build upon, and I think it's something that we need to strengthen. I think that as we go through this work of equity, there are things that we're learning, and there are things that we don't do perfectly, and there's some things that some folks know more about and others know less about, and vice versa. And that's part of the group work of building a community that's equitable, is learning from one another, challenging each other in healthy ways, but learning from one another so that we can improve upon the work that we're doing.
I apologize.
Go ahead.
Don't think I meant to say that you weren't having the conversation. I just wanted to make sure when you say they're not highlighted enough, does that mean, and I'm glad to see it if we're going to make that change, this is great, but does that mean when you say not highlighted enough, it means when you talk to our partner institutions, this issue isn't talked about enough, or the results of those conversations aren't highlighted enough with the district as a whole? I'm trying to understand what's not highlighted enough.
So I think that when I say highlight, I'm always talking about the work that we do with children, and I'm happy to preface that, but we are, what I mean is the work that we're doing with students to be sure that this is something that we're educating them about, things that, so that they're aware of that these institutions exist, that they're aware of the credentials to go to these institutions. I mean, anyone can, but how it would benefit them if they do identify as someone who is Black, or someone who is Indigenous, or someone who is Hispanic, or Latinx, or Caribbean. So when I say highlight, that's what I mean, is to be able to share this information in a way that's tangible to kids, in a way, excuse me, that's engaging to kids, in a way that it will inform them in their journey as students and as human beings.
Dr. Ackman.
Thank you. I'm curious if you know more about this, to our earlier conversation about wanting to make sure, folks are recognized authentically and that there's not tokenism. Do you, like the flag raising, that's very exciting, but I can't, in the few minutes since you've mentioned it, conceive of how that would happen while being inclusive. Do you have thoughts?
Well, we do it for LGBTQ community members, and it's a wonderful way, actually, to show allyship and co-conspiratorship when we all come and gather around the flag. I am not someone who identifies as LGBTQ, but I'm there at the flag raising every year and will continue to be. I also think that it's something that ask came from an educator at the high school, and it was based on feedback and query from the students. So if it's something that the kids are saying that they're wanting, it's something that I would like to noodle around with them and see what their ideas are and how we can have it be embracing to the community.
So I guess maybe the follow-up question would be, what flag, would it?
Yeah, I think it was a literal question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, it was not
That's okay. I don't know, like, maybe we could get a flag with all the flags. I don't know. Right, yes,
That
right,
was more
sorry.
what I'm getting at is like a
I'm
very
sorry.
literal. That's okay.
I
thank you.
misunderstood your
Yeah,
question.
No, I mean, it was a beautiful answer, but it was, yes, in that wanting to be,
Yes.
like, be student responsive, be
Right.
representative, but not leave anyone out.
Right, I
like-
think maybe a flag with all the flags.
Oh, that's all I thought.
Yeah, like one big flag perhaps with the emblems of all the flags on it, or, yeah, I'm not sure what that would look like, but that's a good question.
Great. Okay, if there are no further questions or comments, thank you for your presentation.
Okay, thank you all, have a good evening.
And if it's okay with you, Superintendent, we will jump a little. Dr. Phillips has to leave early, so we are going to take things out of order if no one objects, and take the superintendent evaluation and new goals out of order and do those, and then we will come back to the rest of the district report. So, Dr. Phillips.
Many thanks to you all for jumping around on the agenda. So I think the first task on our agenda is to approve the superintendent's end-of-cycle summative combined evaluation report, which again combines all of our individual reports. The quantitative data is the mode, so the most common responses. The qualitative data are any themes in the qualitative comments that were mentioned by 2 or more school committee members. Overall, again, just to reiterate, the results were super positive. Amongst our overall comments, we're just feeling really positive about our superintendent's commitment to continuous improvement, particularly data-driven decision-making and systems building, his strengths in reorienting our curriculum and instruction, the work on our strategic plan, and ability to engage and build strong relationships with key stakeholders from the jump. So I welcome any comments from anyone, and also a motion to approve.
Dr. Ackman?
So moved.
Second.
By Dr. Ackman, seconded by Dr. Phillips to approve the summative evaluation report. Is there any further discussion? Yes, Dr. Phillips?
Quick friendly amendment. I think we need to authorize the chair to sign it.
That's definitely what I said. There we go. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have an amendment by Dr. Ackman, seconded by Dr. Phillips, to approve it and authorize me to sign it. If there is no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right. All right. And that brings us to the next cycle. Dr. Phillips?
All evaluation, all the time. The one thing I want to highlight that is a change from what we looked at last time, thank you, Member Patone, for flagging the inconsistencies in the timeline. We'll use the same timeline for wrapping up this year's summative evaluation as we did this year. So August will be when we get the forms, with the hopes of approving the summative around the same time next year. So apologies for that confusion. Superintendent, was there anything you wanted to frame up about the goals before folks have comments or questions?
Thank you, through the chair. I first want to thank the committee for the vote of confidence, and I'm really treasure your feedback, and again, I'm humbled by the commitment to continue my growth, so thank you very much. The second part that I like to say is part of my job is also to hold the tenure and the tone and the space for the entire community to be open to feedback. I think the only way we can actually improve and create a student-centered approach or system for that centers the students at the core of what we do is by demonstrating that feedback is one of the ways that we grow. So I think that this is a worthwhile process, and I really appreciate the full commitment that all of you have demonstrated throughout. I think that there was a question as to the timing of the goals, and I think that someone pointed that out last time we were here. And I think that if the cycle, someone mentioned something to the effect that during the summer there's a lot of work that happens. I think that the idea was to push it towards the end of August. So it either at end of August or beginning of September, so it matches the cycle. And also all the information that is accrued through that period of time, including MCAS, is a reference point that is helpful. So I think that's just the only adjustment around that. The second thing I wanted to say is that last time when I was sharing my goals, the 24, 26 goals, we started a conversation around the goals themselves, but one thing that I wanted to say in general is that all of them are tied up to the strategic plan. And so if you look at them, there are critical prerequisites that are built into the strategic plan that need to be addressed as we move forward. So if you are asking me why we chose the ones that we chose, is because they are at the center of the work that needs to happen through the strategic plan. And by highlighting them, it also allows me to narrow my attention and my focus on those different goals.
Mr. Green had a question or a comment. Mr. Green?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, Dr. Cremona, thank you. I think these goals do speak both to what the district's needs and as you said, allowing you to focus, which I think is important. But I do have a question about the schedule. Is the plan to not do like some sort of, what was it called, informative like we did last time? I don't actually have an opinion. I just want to know if that was the intention or an oversight.
The timeline does include that. Oh, here, Dr. Phillips, go ahead.
Yeah, the formative is scheduled right now for February 3rd.
Did I just miss that? I'm sorry. Okay, thank you.
Yes, Ms. Patel.
Thank you, through you, Chair. One thing that has come up, and I'm not implying that we need to get to this level of detail, but in the past we have had, as a school committee, some inputs from the district that informed our work. So we've had principal do a consolidated evaluation. We've had central office do a consolidated evaluation, and that serves the school committee in terms of that perspective of the people that work for the superintendent, to include that in our work. And I mentioned that to the superintendent about whether or not that's something that he felt comfortable including, and I got some positive feedback. So I'm just bringing this to the body. I don't think we necessarily have to make a decision right away, but we probably should make a decision on the sooner side if we're going to ask any staff to somehow participate. And just to be clear, in the past, the way it was done, the same way that it was done for the school committee. So individual principals filled out some type of form. I think it was the same form. And then one person consolidated, so there's no names on it, and that was what we only got a consolidated view. And the same with certain people identified in central office. And so the school committee, again, had a perspective of the staff on how the superintendent is performing. So that's something that I appreciated as a school committee member, and I would like us to consider that moving forward.
So a couple of things. One is, as it is, I do gather feedback through the both central office as well as principals through a 360 review. So that's one thing. The second thing is there is a question as to the logistics of the how of what you're trying to describe. I checked out with multiple superintendents as to how that system works, and there were some interesting questions about what was the purpose of that. Is that something that how is that weighted? How is that process, like in terms of making a decision from your perspective? How are pieces weighted in this process? Because that weighting process is also predicts outcomes, and so. So that's a question that would have to be hashed out in terms of so are we delegating also a decision in terms of the quality of the input or the work that someone is doing based on what reference? So I think that there's benefits to that, and there's also dangers to that. But again, that will be a question that would have to be discussed entirely with the team as to what are we looking for that? Is that something that do we have some clear guidelines, or what tools do we use to determine that? Because there has to be clarity around, like, what are we judging, what are we measuring? I think every feedback is important and is a data point, but I think I think we'll have to iron out what's the metric for that.
Just out of curiosity, you described somehow ways in which this is already happening in the district. Is there any way that whatever that is something that could be anonymized and shared with the committee so that we weren't reinventing the wheel or doing extra work for anyone?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, back to how do we use data points to make a judgment, an informed judgment on outcomes. And the question is, yes, I will have to, again, think about how do we do that. But yeah, not to reinvent the wheel, but to get another perspective. Again, I think it's back again to what are we measuring and how do we measure that. But yes, we can use some of the tools that are created for that kind of feedback. For my purpose, it's corrective feedback. So I think we'll have to, again, it's different, when you talk about outcomes, like let's say a quick example, MCAS measures something for kids, and yet report cards measure something different. And so when you measure the outcome of a student, you have to kind of identify what is the thing that you're measuring. And so the same thing for this process is, I think that it would have to be, we need to have some clarity around what are we measuring. So, but I can actually, I think in the process that we engage when we were looking at the goals, we can actually engage also in identifying the elements that I have in my 360 review to identify what makes sense.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Chair. I'm open to whatever conversation. I think that because we had done it previously that way, I've had that experience, and I personally found it valuable. I don't know if every committee member may or may not have found it valuable. I think what happens now is that it's a lot of anecdotal conversations. And so who do I know in the district? I touch in with people whenever I'm, how are things going, and how do you feel about the new leadership? And having something a little more systematized, I actually think would be really more, for me as a school committee member, more valuable. So I'm happy to have this conversation offline, but I really would like to explore it and see if it makes sense. But I understand your desire to have something that is clear, not just, what do you think? Which is kind of what happens now, so.
And through the chair, if you have those tools, can I also just take a look at them, and so I can actually, it will be easier to just have a comparison. Yeah, that would be great.
So with that, I believe we are voting on these goals this evening, correct, Dr. Phillips? Okay, so I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair?
Wait, sorry, I will not entertain a motion yet. I will call in Mr. Green.
I think over the years, Mr. Todd and I have sometimes disagreed over the value of 360s, but on this point, I actually am encouraged with her. I think, I would say, and that's why I was asking before, as part of perhaps the formative evaluation in February, just having some sense of where the staff was in terms of what they thought, morale, whatever, would be helpful to us as a committee, but also I think helpful to you. Because I think to Mr. Tell's point about anecdotes, if it's only what we hear by people who either come to us or we happen to know, that is by definition going to be skewed towards the ends of the bell curve, because people don't generally come out and say, things are good-ish. It's either I'm so angry or I'm so happy. So being able to hear a broader sense of where the staff thinks we are as part of this evaluation, I think, especially at this point in your career as superintendent, is valuable to everyone.
Okay, now I will entertain a motion to approve these goals.
I move to approve the superintendent's 2024-25 goals. Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Barish, seconded by Dr. Phillips. I have Ms. Patone and then Mr. Vitone. Ms. Patone? Nope. Change them. Okay. Mr. Vitone. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I do have a few questions about some of the goals. So I will happily ask my first and get back in line if others do as well.
I think you can just go for it.
Thank you. So District Improvement Goal 2 is about expanding communications efforts to strengthen partnerships with families in the community. One of the benchmarks is increasing the number of families engaged in school-based events and messages by 10%. I guess my question about that is, how will that be tracked? How did we select 10% as the target for increase? And what's the current percentage of families engaged in those school-based events and messages? So I'm just looking for some clarity there. Thank you.
Yeah, so luckily in working with our Chief of Communication, Jackie Picks, one of the things that she's doing is basically tracking traffic over our website, so to be able to identify what is an increase that makes sense. But since this is the first time we're doing that, part of that is basically identifying what's the baseline in many of these indicators. So in terms of that one, in terms of the public access to the web page, again, is we have to create a baseline on that. Okay, and so the one around participation of school family events, that is also, again, based on the baseline that we have, which I don't have in front of me. 10%, when I asked her, well, what would be a number that makes sense? She said, well, the overall district increase probably would be a 10% increase. So I think that what is a realistic measure and what is one that is also a, that makes sense is a discussion that we can have. But again, if you think about the numbers that we have before in our website from the school committee in the past, like diversification was increased 5%. So I would say 10% is probably not a scientific number, but it's a discussion that I had with Jackie Picks, who runs this department. And so we're thinking, what is a reasonable improvement in a large system? So.
But I think just to follow up on his question, a number of, say, like a PTA event at a school, a fundraiser in the evening, whatever it is, are people actually counting the number of people who show up at those?
Usually, for the most part, when we have events, there is usually in Title I, through Title I, we actually have to keep record of the number of participants in most of the events.
Did you want to follow up? Yep.
Yeah, just a follow-up clarifying. So let's say the current percentage, I know you didn't give a number because you may have it, but let's say it's 20% right now. Is the expected increase to 30%, a 10% increase, or is it 10% of 20%, so it would be a 22% increase? Or I'm sorry, an increase to 22%. And I know that's a super specific question, but it's a big difference.
Yeah, so again, we don't have a baseline because that wasn't something that we had before, is that right? So we are trying to establish a baseline based on the data that is being put together. So on top of that, at 10% will be, I think, a reasonable number that will show a positive trajectory. So I don't have a baseline number yet, again, because those numbers haven't been given to me, but in whatever baseline we have, we will increase the 10%.
Which is, I think he's saying from 20% to 30%, not from 22
In your
to
example,
22
correct,
in his
yeah.
example, if I'm-
Correct.
Yes.
Based on your criteria, yes. But I didn't want to commit to a 20%. I don't know what
Right,
the
we were
number
just
is
using
yet.
that
We're holding you to 30%, thank you.
Correct.
Okay. I had Ms. Patel.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify to the membership that this is a 2024 to 2026 set of goals. So it's not a one-year goal, it's a two-year goal. We are going to do the cycle and review every year. So I just wanted to, the motion should be changed to 2024 to 2026, and probably the title of the file should be changed, just logistics. But just our process is that, we're going to hopefully see progress and trends over the next year to show that we're moving in that direction, and then the expectation would be over the 2 years. And I appreciate that because this is very ambitious, and I just really want people to understand that. Actually, that was a little bit of my feedback at one point. It was like, this is super ambitious, which was one of the reasons I think it went to 2 years. So I just wanted to flag that for the members.
Thank you for that clarification. Dr. Phillips?
I really appreciate that clarification, Member Pitone. And as I'm going through, now that it's written as 2-year goals, and I think many of the goals, all the ones where we're establishing a baseline for different things, I think we need to then take it one step forward, or we're establishing baselines and targets. We have to make progress towards those targets. And I know that that's mostly for 25, 26. I don't know if we need to write that in now, but I'm just flagging that at this point.
I had a motion by Ms. Barish, seconded by Dr. Phillips. Would you like to accept the friendly amendment to make the motion?
I do accept Ms. Pitone's friendly amendment.
Okay. If there...
Madam Chair? To Dr. Phillips' point about the goals and making changes, actually, I guess also to Mr. Pitone's question, will there be opportunity next a year from now, when we do this process again, to say, hey, now that we have baselines, some of these percentages for targets may not be realistic, or is a plan that we're not going to meet these goals a year from now?
Let me try to respond to that. So I think every target, I mean, we have to adjust based on the baseline. I want to remind you that you had a goal in the website for years as to improvement of diversification for 5%, and I don't think you ever seen any numbers that were discussed with you in terms of that goal. So I want to be very careful about making sure that I commit to a number that makes sense. I think we are really invested on that. In my conversation again with Karen Woods, who leads that department, and Mariana and Mrs. HR department, Mariana McDonald. One of the things that we're trying to make sure is that if we set a timeline, a baseline, that we commit to making sure that there are improvements and we can track them. And so the reality is that we haven't, and I think that I also want to be very realistic that we create a baseline that is based on the numbers and not, I just don't want to be throwing any numbers out there that are not meaningful. So I don't know if that answers your question, Mr. Green.
Well, I think...
No, I think it does. I think we're all on the same page. I don't want to be in a situation a year from now where we have baseline numbers for these things, and then we have set a goal that you can't possibly meet, and then you look like a failure when you didn't.
I'm sorry, I think I cut you off there at the beginning. What did you start?
I think we're on the same page. I just want to make sure that a year from now, when we have better data, we're not holding the superintendents to unrealistic expectations if we were wrong on some stuff.
And I think that's part of the reason why these are now 2-year goals and not a 1-year goal. Ms. Patone.
Thank you, through you, Chair. And this is kind of an extension from Mr. Green's comments. I think it's reasonable to say, okay, we have 2-year goals, but as we do our first evaluation, there might be some tweaks that we make to the goals because of the learning of the first year. So my expectation, and I don't want to make sure the superintendent is comfortable with this and my colleagues are, is that there might be some adjustments to this draft at this time next year after we've gone through the evaluation process, because we will have those baselines and we will have learned things, and some things might be accelerated and some things might be slowed down. So I hope that that's okay with everyone, particularly the superintendent.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, and I just wanted to describe how the process happens with principals and educators as well. It's the same thing, is that we set out to accomplish some things with either students or our own personal practice, and then at the end of the year, we actually have to have a clear rationale of why we didn't make it or why we made up to certain components of the goal. But that's a natural process that happens, and so I hope that we continue to follow the natural cadence of how goals are accomplished. Not to give myself excuse, but actually just to highlight that there is a nature of evolution in the goal sometimes.
Thank you, Chair, through you. And building upon my colleague, Ms. Patone's point, and Dr. Cremona, what you were saying earlier around, we don't even have benchmarks for some of the measures that you have committed or you're hoping to commit to increasing. I'm looking at District Improvement Goal 3 that lays out benchmarks and measures for progress for year 1, but not for year 2 also. And so I think and why would you be able to commit to something on that when we're talking about standing up a steering committee and a task force that we haven't yet convened? So it's really hard to envision what's coming a year down the line, and I think we as a body owe it to the community and to you to revisit this at a reasonable increment. So I think this is a fully supportive notion that we're talking about here.
I think we're all on board that this will be revisited. Ms. Patone.
And just through you, Chair, just to close this topic, I would encourage us on our little timeline to just add a year 3 evaluation and put an item in there that says, we'll relook and edit as goals as necessary from the learning from the year 2. So that's my request, is that we include that in the timeline.
Okay, so now with no further discussion, we have a motion by Ms. Barish, seconded by Dr. Phillips. All in favor?
Yeah.
All opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so we will now go back and finish the superintendent's report. Dr. Cremona?
Thank you. Through the chair, let me just ground myself back into the sequence of things that we were discussing. Facilities walkthrough memo. Great. So I just wanted to go back again to that conversation of the memo. As we have shared over the past few meetings, we are developing more robust and efficient systems for tracking facility needs across the district. As part of this work, our Chief of Staff and Strategy, Amara Anosike, is working closely with our partners in DPW and IAM to track, log, and make progress on maintenance and repairs needs at each school. The memo on facility walkthroughs in your packet outlines some of our collaborative efforts with the city. My summary today is not an exhaustive list of the work that DPW, capital projects, or the city is engaged in to ensure safe and inclusive school environments. Instead, my summary includes the items we observed and discussed during the walkthroughs. Certain items related to safety protocols may have been excluded from this report for obvious reasons. In September, representatives from my office, the Department of Public Works and Capital Projects, conducted walkthroughs at 11 schools in the district. Obviously, the New Wave Full Circle is one school in the same facility, but we're counting 11 schools. And the purpose of these walkthroughs was to observe and assess the current needs, identify potential solutions, and prioritize maintenance and repairs. The process requires significant time, coordination, and effort, but it proved effective in making progress toward maintaining optimal building conditions and proactively addressing concerns. Somerville Public Schools is incredibly grateful to our city partners for their commitment to this thorough and collaborative assessment. I'm happy to address any questions if you have any in regards to the memo.
Ms. Patone?
Thank you, through you, Chair, to the superintendent. Clearly, this was a huge amount of work and a huge amount of time and represents significant collaboration, and I very much applaud that. I am curious how this process, is this going to be sort of a way that you operate moving forward? Is this something that's going to happen quarterly? And this is probably maybe a little bit too much detail, but I will throw it out there, is that, like, how does this list being monitored at the same time we have a 311 list, at the same time we have an IAM list? Do you understand what I'm asking? Like, so I'm asking, I guess, more of the system and process question, at the same time really complementing this and appreciating what is here.
Through the chair, thank you for the question, and that's the same conversation that I had with Amara about all the different systems that are being in place. So let me just try to frame this for what it is. So this is a walkthrough. This is basically a best practice action that we haven't had in the district at this scale. Basically, we got the principal, we got DPW, we got IAM, and Amara as well, and they walked the building, identifying things that were pending, things that have been off the list, as well as major pain points. So that was the purpose for that, not only to kind of unify the efforts, but also to give the principal the floor, as well as kind of having a baseline on a process that hasn't been created this way. So having said that, my concern is, okay, so how does this become part of a system when we also have a 311 system that we don't, that's the city has a robust system through the 311 process. It is hard to sort out through that 311 process to identify what's the district, what's the city. So we still need to have a dashboard that allows us to actually kind of sort out this information from the 311 and also the capital improvement process, because those are also a big list of things that require not only the feedback from the capital improvement, DPW, but also the business office, and there's another office that gets involved in the process. So yes, the question or the comment is important in knowing that this is the first time we did it. I want to do it probably midpoint and as well as the end of the year, but I also have to consult with the city because this took quite some time and took quite some crisscrossing agendas to make sure that this happened. But I feel that if we come to a dashboard in which we can keep both DPW needs, IAM, capital investment or capital improvements in separate places but similar places that people can know exactly where they are, that would be my dream. But again, we have to work in conjunction with the work of the city.
Follow up?
Thank you. And I know this is part of the goals for next year. So like in terms of the facilities and having a system. So I appreciate that. And I also want to encourage, if this is something that happens in the beginning, the midpoint, and the end of the year, that the midpoint focuses a lot on the summer plans. Because sometimes I think what has happened in the past is that at the end of the year, because this used to happen, I think, kind of maybe in May or June, but if we're going to be planning, the city has to, we all know the lead times for things are really long, and we all like to talk about supply chain. And so whatever decisions that we want to make about the summer, those decisions need to be made in January so that all the parts and the supplies can be ordered. So I'm just going to highlight that. So thank you.
I have Ms. Barish and then Mr. Buton. Ms. Barish?
Thank you. This is a really helpful memo. It's, I think, a bit daunting, but also important for us to see sort of the conditions of our buildings in this way. I am concerned, I see that for the Kennedy, it says roof maintenance and says roof needs replacement soon. And then under the Healy, it says roof maintenance needed, but it doesn't say specifically. So I'm just curious if you have any more information, like the notation at the Healy, does that also mean the roof needs a full replacement? I'm curious about that, and maybe you can't tell me that right now. That's fine. It just seems like needing to replace 2 roofs, which I assume would ideally happen over the summer, but I don't know. Maybe that's not horribly disruptive to learning. And it appears someone is suggesting that that is expensive work as well. So I'm just curious about, I would like more information about what exactly the Healy roof needs, whether it's just it needs a patch somewhere or it needs a new roof.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think it depends. I mean, I know that there's an envelope question across the district about not only the Healy but other facilities. So that I think is a conversation that is more comprehensive. I believe there's a meeting yet. Today's what? Today's
October 21st.
No, but today's Monday, Tuesday, Monday. Sorry, but I know there's a meeting. There was a meeting, or there's a meeting to talk about the capital improvement conversation. And so I don't know yet how each one of them have been kind of framed and where are they in the queue as far as what needs to be addressed first or second. So I don't want to speak to the sequence or the order of operations in terms of which one needs more attention or not. But I know that there's intensive work around that. There is a meeting with capital planning and the city and Ed Bean to address or to kind of frame these conversations around the needs. But yeah, they are critical, and some of them, this requires significant funding, yeah.
Mr. Buchon?
Thank you, Chair, through you. I just wanted to highlight that this memorandum is fantastic, and it's essentially responsive to one of the requests that this body received from the Somerville Council of PTAs 2 years ago, which if you don't have, I would be happy to pass along to you. So it is organized and it provides information about in process, and I think this is exactly the kind of transparency that we desperately need, and I'm so glad to see it in front of us, so thank you.
Further questions? More to your report, Dr. Harmon?
That's that as far as the report goes. Again, I just wanted to highlight this. The 311 process is also goes parallel with this, but the walkthrough was more of a best practice to norm around the complexity and volume of things that we see. But the 311 is also, we review that with the team to go over where things are in the queue. So more to come in terms of how we strengthen that work. I just want to really thank DPW and IAM for their willingness to engage in that process and be very forthcoming. So that's that for the part of the superintendent report.
Okay, so that brings, oh, is there more?
Say it, yeah. Thank you, the chair. I just wanted to mention that there is a memo in the packet in response. Mr. Bitone requested an overview of the Bunsen burners across the district, and there's a memo in your packet on that.
Yes, Ms. Parrish.
Thank you for highlighting that, Dr. Boston Davis. I just wanted to ask, do you know, because I think a lot of that information was maybe from a week or two ago, do you know if the switches arrived and were installed yet?
It's my understanding that they've not yet arrived. Okay. However, I will confirm with Principal Kirsten and get back to you. I did review this memo today with a few members, and so it's not my understanding that there's been any updates on that, but I will review and get back to you.
Thanks.
Thank you for that. And just one more thing that I was forgetting to, I was going to share last time and missed it, but I know that we had a conversation about the Rivers Field, and the update basically is that in collaboration with DPW and the city, we agreed to identify a section of the field in which now students, the football team can have the chutes and the sleds to do the practice that is needed. And so, this is really a critical step in making sure that the students have a safety tools to be ready to play the sport. So that was, again, in collaboration with DPW and the city, we managed to figure that out. So.
It's unfortunate that it took that long, but I'm glad to hear that you had a successful.
I just want to thank the superintendent and the staff who, on the city side and the school side, that figured this out. This felt like a little bit of a juggernaut, and to be able to successfully figure this out together to meet the needs of students, especially as we're navigating these new spaces. That's what the challenge is. I just want to applaud and thank the team for doing that. It's a big deal.
Thank you.
Okay. I believe the next on our agenda is a personnel report. Did you have anything to update us on?
Yes, I have a short personal report, and we received 2 retirement notices. Janice Puslan, she's a full-time lead teacher in community school, retiring after 24 years of service. and Yi Liu, music teacher at the Healy School, retiring after 15 years of service. So thank you to Janice and Yi for all the years of services and dedication to our SPS students. And just a positive development also, Lindsay McDonald was promoted from paraprofessional to a home resource room teacher. So congratulations to Lindsay.
Okay, that brings us to reports of subcommittees. I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve its ed programs and finance, is that right?
Yep.
Move to approve those.
I have a motion by Dr. Ackman. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Vitone. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to a diploma. I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the diploma for Matthew Correa of Somerville, Massachusetts.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Barish, seconded by Dr. Ackman. If there is no discussion, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries, and congratulations to Matthew. Okay, that brings us to the MASC Conference Delegate and Resolution. So we have two things. We need to figure out who our delegate will be, and if we have any guidance for that delegate on the resolutions. So between myself, Eleanor, Andre, and Laura, I have done it before. I am willing to do it again, but I have no burning desire to do it again. Andre, anything from you from the Beyond? I believe it's happening Thursday afternoon.
I certainly enjoy it, but if someone else wants to do it, I would be happy to let them do it.
Okay. Yes. Dr. Ackman?
I motion to nominate Andre as the representative and Laura as the alternate.
I have a motion by Dr. Ackman, seconded by Mr. Bitone. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. So now we have the resolutions. We have the option to simply make a motion to delegate our representative to use their judgment, or we can send along guidance. I know there was a question last time from Mr. Green to the district as to whether they had any opinions on the Resolution 2, which is about increasing the compulsory attendance age.
Yeah, that's a great question. I did a little bit of research in terms of that question. I'm looking at from 2019 to 2023 or 24, I guess. What I see is that, first of all, we have, an average of 20 dropouts that happen throughout the year, in every year is a big number. Some years was 31 kids, other years was in the 20s, but the average is 20. What I'm noticing also is that this resolution will solve, in most cases, 30 to 40% of the problems that are being address with the increase of the compulsory age restriction or age qualifier. So that means that there are many kids who still will not be served by that change, who are 18, 19, or 20, 18 and 19. So I still have to understand what are the pros and cons of such requirement. For some families, it will create a hardship. For our system, it might be beneficial because it would allow us also to provide more services for students. But I am looking at the research, and is in different places. So I don't have a defined suggestion or solution for this question, but all I want to say is that in our case, it will solve less than half of the problem of the students who have dropped out. In some cases, if we do that, we still have 60% of the students who are dropped out that are beyond 18, that are 18 or beyond. And so I am really concerned about how do we actually make sure that the current dropout issue that we have in Somerville is addressed through many alternatives that we need to explore. So in regards to that question, I don't have a definite answer to that, but I am concerned about the negative impact that it might also have.
Okay, Ms. Parrish?
I'm just curious, and this isn't a reason not to support it, I suppose, but we have a lot of seniors who graduate when they're 17, so I would assume that what it means is the compulsory attendance age is 18 or completion of high school diploma. And I don't know if it's nitpicky, but I think it's important to recognize that there are students who finish before they're 18.
Yes, Dr. Akron?
Through the chair, my understanding is compulsory education becomes moot once they've completed the requirement. I can understand why you'd want to include it, but I think it's not legally necessary. Does that make sense?
Right, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Bouton?
Are we talking only about Resolution 2 or any of the resolutions?
We can talk about any of them.
So, if I may, I am very supportive of Resolution 1 with one exception. So Resolution 1 is about development of an alternative to the high-stakes MCAS test. I support that. I think we have a lot of data to suggest that the test is not meeting the needs of our students or our district, and that an alternative could be introduced. However, one of the be it resolved says that Massachusetts should enact a moratorium on MCAS testing effective immediately, which I think is a bridge too far, and I think without something in place leaves us without an effective means to assess progress, and maybe there's a way to transition off it, but I think as written, I have serious concerns. So I would just, to Member Green or Petone, I personally would not support this resolution unless that particular item was struck.
So the question is, would you like to make a motion about whether we support it, or would you just like to send that guidance to our representatives?
That's my guidance. I'm not sure what the feeling of the body is, but yeah.
Ms. Parrish?
I agree with Mr. Bouton. I think it may leave the district in a difficult position just because a lot of the bench, we were just talking about goals, and I think they may not refer directly to MCAS, but that is one of the data points that we use year after year, and I think to just do away with it without anything else in place might be a challenge, but maybe Dr. Carmona or Dr. Boston Davis can speak to this and whether it would in fact introduce some challenges.
So my understanding is that so we're basically removing the punitive side of the MCAS as a measuring tool in terms of how it impacts student outcomes as they graduate. So we use the MCAS as a reference, and I think minimizing the impact that it has in instruction in terms of testing time and all that is probably one of the things that we should do. But the good thing about those numbers is that they're somewhat norm across the state, and so they give us a reference point. So I would not be, I think that's data that we will use in the short run and long run to assess growth and other metrics that are difficult if we don't have those tools to do that at this point.
Mr. Bouton?
So I guess I would make a motion to instruct our delegate to, and I see he has his hand up, to vote no on this unless that item is struck.
Mr. Green?
I was going to state as a statement of fact that if Massachusetts were to
Second,
stop,
After there's a motion, you can't have a comment.
You're right. Let me take a second on the motion and then come back to a discussion on the motion. Is there a second to Mr. Vitone's motion?
Second, sorry.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Green, go ahead.
I was going to say, thank you, I missed that. That as a statement of fact, if Massachusetts were to get rid of impasse tomorrow, we would be in violation of federal law and would lose all federal education funding. So I would also support striking that being resolved, just as a matter of like Massachusetts can't do that right now. So why kill the things we can do and pursue something we can't do?
Okay, is there any further discussion on this motion? Ms. Barish?
May I offer a friendly amendment?
Sure.
So I guess I would encourage Mr. Green to make a motion to remove that part from the resolution and also to not approve it if it is not struck.
Accepted.
I have a motion by Mr. Vitone, seconded by Ms. Barish. Ms. Vitone.
Thank you through the chair. I just wanted to appreciate Mr. Vitone for bringing this up. It was on my list of concerns, having to remove something that we use, and particularly from our more vulnerable students with special needs, language learners. This is a tool that actually gets used to justify services. So until there's some other substitution, I appreciate also Mr. Green bringing up the fact that we're legally obligated to do it. I would support removing that, therefore, be it further resolved item.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. So that brings any other questions or discussion about other resolutions. Ms. Barish?
I just want to thank Mr. Green and Chair Krepshin, and Ms. Patone for being willing to take on this role.
Ms. Patone?
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm trying to find the exact resolution. There's one about a tax authority with local contribution. I mean, I certainly, as a member of a school committee, support anything that involves us getting more money. However, I was sort of confused about how it's phrased, that's going from equating your increase from 2.5% to being the same as what the increase in Chapter 70, is that what it was? I apologize if I don't have it,
It's number 5, I think, aligning
I was looking at it
taxing.
digitally, so it's hard for me to.
I understand, I have it in front, so I'm assuming this is Resolution 5, aligning taxing
Thank you, I found it.
authority with the required local contribution?
Yes. So it's basically saying legislation would increase the municipality's levy limit by the amount of the increase of the required local contribution in the excess of 2.5%. So basically, if it's 5%, they want it to be 5%? Is that how people are interpreting it?
Dr. Ackman?
So my understanding is there is a state law that, when I drive into the suburbs and see things about tax overrides, so there's a state law that caps growth at that 2.5%. And so my understanding is that they're asking, this is a formal request for an additional 2.5%? So I think, is that?
It's tied to what the local contribution changes are.
Okay, yes. It is, so maybe, actually, to that point, like we have in our lobby there, plain language descriptions of what our state ballot questions are. My request, and I see Mr. Green's hand up just to note that, 2 MASC is a plain language descriptor of this, because there are many of these that are just markedly confusing.
Mr. Green?
Sorry for like cutting you off because it is confusing.
Yeah, so this was going to be one of my questions for the committee, because so it's calling for an amendment to Prop 2.5, basically say for cities and towns that are struggling to meet local contribution, but Somerville is not, that if, say, their local contribution increased by 4%, they don't need an override to get to 4%. They can just go to 4%. I'm inclined to support it, like Ms. Patel. I'm supportive of anything that increases school budgets. But my question for the committee was going to be, if, and I expect this one will be, there's amendments about it to be bolder about attacking Prop 2.5. What we feel about that?
Dr. Akron?
I think this is to responding to your question. I think it's just like we're here for more money, or like I will say that, like whatever. You know, I'm fine with it if it gets more money into schools.
I just don't know if this is realistic.
Ms. Riton?
Through you, my concern is that this would not be legal. I think the state constitution, I don't know the background exactly of the Prop 2.5, but I recall it being something that would be a high bar to pass, and I'm not sure the state legislature is going to do this. So I'm not sure whether it's really worth disentangling this very complicated text to figure out how to get us there, but anyway.
Did you have your hand up? Ms. Parrish?
I think that the way it's written, it's asking for legislation to be enacted, which to me means if it's in the Constitution, let's change the Constitution. I mean, maybe no one in the
State legislation?
Thank you. State legislature is like interested in doing that, but I think if we can demonstrate that there's support for it, it's more likely than it was yesterday.
Mr. Green, do you have your hand up again, or is it still?
Mr. Patel's question, Prop 2.5 is a law, not a constitutional amendment, so it could be amended by the legislature. I read that, practically speaking, I don't think it's going to happen. But to that point, I would put out that MASC passes resolutions all the time that don't happen in the short term. They were calling for fully funding what is now the Student Opportunity Act since the 90s, and it initially happened. So I think pushing towards the policies we want to see is always worth it, even if we don't see it actually in the next legislative cycle.
Okay. Are there any other specific concerns? Okay, we will have this, because we have one more meeting.
Can I ask a question again?
For the conference, so we can have this on our agenda one more time if anyone has any other further guidance or questions about that. Okay, so
I would love a question. I would love, and I don't need an answer right now,
Mr. Green?
but I would love if members had thoughts on Resolution 2, if they could share with me before the vote, because I don't know what to do on that one.
Okay. That was the one about the age, about raising the age to 18.
I just don't know enough to have an informed opinion.
Okay, that brings us to an MSBA update. Dr. Kimura?
Through the chair, so at their last meeting, the City Council voted to approve funds for feasibility study. This marks the final formal step in our eligibility phase for the MSBA process, though there are still some ongoing conversations with the MSBA for questions they have asked us, and one final enrollment certification that we need to sign. So we are on track to fully meet our deadline for this phase, which is the end of November. On October 8th, I attended the inaugural meeting on the Construction Advisory Group along with Member Green, and I look forward to the next meeting that is planned for early November. So that's the...
Ms. Patel?
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to the Superintendent. I was also able to attend the CAG, the Construction Advisory Group, And there was a really nice, diverse perspective from families. But I was concerned, I think we're all concerned there's no staff representation, but I'm also concerned there's no central office representation. I really do think sort of our educational programs and our educational strategy really needs to be in the forefront of this conversation. So I would encourage the superintendent to give this some consideration. I'm sure Mr. Green has some thoughts too on this topic, but to not have educators, and would love to have staff, meaning like teachers, but if we can have someone from central office representing the vision for the district and the strategy, I think that's really important. And I could get into the details, but I won't, because I think you guys know a lot of what the issues are.
Right, so my understanding again is that the decision that the CAG is making is not about the instructional component, but is about the location that they're finalizing.
You can't separate the two.
Well, I agree on the premise, but every time the conversation has come up is that the charge that team has is only to make a decision as to the location itself. So that's my understanding. I think that I hear you, and I think that if the conversation is around making sure that our input is at the table, that we will definitely make sure that happens. But again, the charge that committee has is a little bit different.
I have Mr. Green, Ms. Barish, and then Ms. Patone. Mr. Green?
I want to thank Ms. Patone for bringing this up, because I was going to do the same. I know that's what the city kept saying in the meeting, and I'm going to echo Chair Krepschen. You can't separate the two. Like, the way the meeting ran, they could have been talking about building a new condo. Like, I had one point to say, I got around people, we're building a school here. Like, it's not just about, it's about finance, it's about logistics, it's all those things too, but it's also about the way we think for the next 50 years is the best way to educate kids. And, I'm happy to bang that drum all day, but I really do think, we need people who that's what they do on that committee.
Ms. Barish, and then Ms. Patone.
Even if that group is only choosing a location, it is by default also deciding whether or not to integrate or to combine two school communities, which goes way beyond a location. And maybe that isn't necessarily about educational programming, but it is about how the district is organized. It could potentially be the elimination of our only K-5 school. It could potentially, it could potentially change the layout of the schools across the geographic space of the district, which does bring up questions about access and the way we organize our schools if we go from having a K-5 to no K-5, which I would hope the district could have some input. And I know that the CAG is not making the decision, at least that's my understanding. They're making a recommendation to the mayor, who will make the decision. So certainly the superintendent and staff will have opportunities to discuss this with the mayor, and we will have opportunities to discuss this with the mayor and to express our visions for the city and for education in the city going forward. But it does seem like it would make sense to have that voice at that level.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I appreciate both Mr. Green and Ms. Barish's perspective and how they represented this decision. I don't believe we're giving this CAG team the support and the perspective they need to make a good decision and collectively assess the situation in a holistic manner without having an educational perspective on the problem. Issues such as what type of programming, the demographic of our students, the fact that we actually have segregated schools, all these topics are going to come up and really matter and having educators at that table to be part of that conversation, I really think will inform that team. They're a bunch of really smart, committed people, and I think they deserve all the right information, and I think they deserve colleagues in this work that will help them think through this process. So I don't know if I have to make a motion to my colleagues to request that the mayor include a central office or educational staff on this committee, or consider including it, or if there's a recommendation from the superintendent of how to pursue this topic, because I really do think that we're doing this team a disservice by not providing that perspective as a member, not just with information, but in the dialogue, because they're going to have really difficult discussions, and I really want them to have the broadest perspective on the situation. It's not just a box, as Mr. Green said. This is a school.
So through the chair, I know that we through Jackie Peaks, we were out doing some outreach to make sure that we got some teacher input, because there were a couple of spots separated for teachers, and we didn't get anyone. I know that she continued to look into that. I'll follow up with her on that. I hear what you're saying. I think that the thing that is complicated is how the assignment of this group is being defined. And unless I think the criteria on how that definition of what the task that is being asked of them I find it complicated in terms of like, what is my role in that? And so if I'm asked to fulfill a role in that process, I'm open to that. But I think part of the challenge is also how, what is the task that group has? And so every time I hear a conversation about, well, we are making a decision based on what programmatic needs, I hear the response, well, this is the task of this group is about X, Y, and Z versus this. So if that is being redefined, or that conversation takes a different tone or a different direction, that is, I definitely feel that there's a contribution that we will be able to fulfill, which is in the MSBA process, the original part of that was to design the programmatic, what we designed for a school or for a combined school. I can have a conversation with my team about the ask, but again, I think I struggle is with the assignment that the group has.
Through the chair, the superintendent, I appreciate your thoughts. Clearly, there's sort of different perspectives. I mean, if you are going to task the group with not only a location, but whether or not you merge two different populations, we are making a decision. We are. So I think that piece of it.
Laura, your mic's not on.
Sorry. In short, if we're asking this group to do not only a location, but possibly make a decision of whether or not these two populations are going to stay separate in two different buildings or merge into one building, this is an educational concern, and it impacts the district as a whole, and it's part of the strategy. So I'm really struggling with, just saying the location is not accurate. It is both. And I sat in that meeting, and it was both. So that's what I'm struggling with, and I guess I'm just going to make a motion to request that the superintendent make a recommendation to the mayor's office, or I guess explore with the mayor, I'll be more gentle, explore with the mayor the inclusion of an educational perspective, either from central office or educators. I think that there's a strategy component. I would love to have educators as well as teachers, would be amazing, but also whether it's a principal or somebody coming from central office to participate in the team, because it's very different to be in the team than it is to come and present something or share some information, because you're collaborating. So in short, request that the superintendent have the conversation with the mayor to discuss the inclusion of a educational strategy component beyond teachers and that team.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Patone, seconded by Mr. Green. Is there any discussion on this motion? Ms. Barish? Oh, yes, Mr. Green, thank you.
Actually, Mr. Tone's being nicer than I would have been, because either the city believes this is an educational decision or they don't. If it's an educational decision, then central office to be represented in the decision-making process. If it's not, then I question why I'm involved, and I can take my nights back. Like if this is just a logistic technical problem, then we just make a decision based on the finances and the construction and go. But if we believe that building schools is about how we best educate kids, then central office should be part of that conversation.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I'm a little confused about this motion. I recall at an earlier meeting at some point in my tenure, Mr. Green raising the point that we shouldn't make motions to ask the superintendent to do his job. And I think asking him to speak with the mayor to relay this important consideration is something that we could do without a motion. I guess the question is to my colleagues through you around whether we need a motion for this or whether we can empower or just ask the superintendent to do this.
Thank you for that question, Mr. Bitone, through the chair. Clearly, what I'm hearing from the superintendent is there's a conflict, and I could ask the superintendent on the side, have a conversation with him and say, could you do this? But I wanted to make sure that I'm not the only one concerned about this, and to see if the other members of the body are concerned. There's also, a conflict about the situation, so that's why I made that decision. Now, if people are uncomfortable with that, please let me know. But it's my opportunity to try to move something forward in an awkward way, and I apologize for that. I didn't plan for this, but I feel like it's something that I'd like to see, and that's why I changed it from making it happen to just having this conversation and reporting back to the committee on it.
Mr. Green, do you have your hand up again?
I do. I want to thank Mr. Bitone for his point, but I feel that this is a slightly different than just telling someone to do his job, which I agree we should not pay back motions to do. This is more giving the superintendent a little cover to say, hey, this is how the school committee feels. All right, so when he's talking to the city, which sounds like he's already doing, it's not just saying, well, this is what I think. This is, the school committee feels very strongly on this and they want this, which I think is slightly different. Although, I am mindful of Mr. Pitone's point that perhaps if we had written this in advance, there'd be a better way to write it so it's not, somebody didn't do his job.
Thanks for the clarification.
Okay, if there is no further discussion, we have a motion on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. Okay, is there anything further on the MSBA discussion? Okay,
I just wanted to add,
again?
and this might also might give context to, I think, Ms. Bitone and my concern is that when you look at the school building committee that's been built for Winter Hill School, and you compare it to, say, the high school building committee, there's a lot less educator and voice on the proposed Winter Hill School Committee, Winter Hill Building Committee than there is on the there was on the high school committee. So I do think a real conversation about how are we making sure that this is not just seen as a construction project, an education project happens, because it is very much my sense of the city that that is not how they're treating it currently.
Okay. That brings us to items from board members. Does anyone have any items? Going once. Mr. Bitone?
Thank you, Chair, through you. You mentioned it earlier in the meeting at the very top, but on Friday, October 18th, there was a secure and hold at the high school. And Next Wave Full Circle, based on a threat that was reported through a phone call to Somerville High School staff. And I really just wanted to thank educators and staff for working through what was a very scary situation. and being professional and reassuring. And I also wanted to commend the district and the superintendent and the Somerville Police Department for how they worked together to handle that difficult situation. And finally, for the messaging that went out to families and educators. I thought that communication was right on the mark, and it's how we build or break trust. And so I'm hopeful that this situation will work to continue building trust in our educational and civic leaders. So I really wanted to thank you for that and acknowledge it. That's it.
Great. Thank you for that. If there are no other items from board members, we do not have any condolences this evening, so we are adjourned. Good night, everyone.